This is Get Real with Bob and Stacy, the show that helps you learn about the mortgage and real estate markets. Get the inside scoop from their expert list of guests and have some fun along the way. Now, here's Bob Gallagher and Stacy Alcorn.
Welcome back. You're listening to Get Real with Bob and Stacy. You're joining us for our Leaders and Legends segment. Our first guest today is author and pastor Jim Hart. Welcome to the show, Pastor Jim. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Bob and Stacy. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
So I want to give everybody some background on Pastor Jim. After 12 years of counseling and life coaching at the church and various organizations, Jim formed the Hart Company in 2012. Through his company, he offers counseling, coaching, workshops, seminars to married and engaged couples. He also provides workshops and seminars in the areas of family leadership and diversity for churches and businesses. His popular coaching calls for married couples have blessed more than 100 couples. Couple of interesting facts about Jim is he wrote the book, The Great Husband's Playbook. So if you're just tuning in, go grab your husband right now and have him listen in. And secondly, I didn't know if you want this to be public knowledge since you're in New Jersey, but he's a Red Sox fan as well.
We like that up here, though.
Yes. So
no, everybody knows that I'm a Red Sox fan, so that's not a problem at all.
Oh, that's awesome. So Jim is married to his wife, Yatunde, and they have 3 kids, Sam, Daniel, and Gabrielle. For Jim, being a husband and father is his greatest joy and responsibility. So, Pastor Jim, why does every married man need to read The Great Husband's Playbook?
Stacey, that's a great question, and I would say that every man needs to read the playbook because every wife wants and needs their husband to become great. And I truly believe that every man, regardless of his stature, regardless of his education, regardless of the family background he's come from, every man has the potential to truly become great for his wife. And every wife that I've ever sat down with never wanted their husband to settle for a mediocre lifestyle or just to live an average life, but they all wanted and needed and desired for him to become great. And so that's why every husband really needs to read The Great Husband's Playbook.
Wow. So is there any particular section in the book that you think a wife would appreciate the most?
Well, the book is written, the entire book is written for men. I speak directly to men and to married men, but we do have a chapter specifically set aside for the wives, where we walk them through what it is that they're going to have to do if they have a husband who's trying to do the right thing, and what do you do if your husband has been neglectful, maybe abusive, maybe absent, maybe passive and not been the leader that you need him to be. We have a whole chapter that really walks the wife through what she needs to do. And I think wives will probably appreciate staying in bounds. I talk about the things that a guy needs to do to stay in bounds, to not go out of bounds. Whenever you're playing football or basketball or baseball, the moment you step out of bounds, the play stops. And oftentimes guys are going out of bounds with their actions and their attitudes and their dispositions. So we really teach guys how to stay in bounds, stay in the flow of the game, stay in the flow of marital life so that you can become great for your wife. So those 2 chapters they'll probably appreciate the most.
So I know there's a section in the book that focuses on finances. Can you elaborate on the part, just that particular part, since so many marriages go through conflict over money?
Sure. The 3 major areas that couples often wrestle with is sex, communication, and money. And most of the time with the couples that I see, money is inevitably a topic of discussion. Sometimes there's really heated discussions and there's a lot of problems. Sometimes it's just the normal differences between the spender and the saver. What I really wanted to walk through, guys, what I've been finding is that there's a lot of guys who are working hard. They're trying to provide for their family, but they're not taking the initiative to be the financial managers of the household. I'm not talking about being a financial advisor. They make their money, they bring their check home, and they hand it to their wife, and they say, you pay all the bills, you do all the things that need to happen, and I'm just going to go sit and watch the football game. And wives don't want that pressure. They don't want that burden. Sometimes wives are better economically. They're better with numbers. They're better with budgeting than men are. That's not the issue. But the women want, and what I've been hearing wives say is, we want our husbands to be engaged in the process. to know where all the bills are. I've had guys tell me, I got to call my wife to see if there's even any money in the account so I can go get gas. Like, you should not be that completely disconnected from the financial management of the household. It's more than just bringing home a paycheck. It's really being involved in the process. If your wife's better at the money, then you are not a problem. But you should know where all the money is. You should know where all the accounts are. You should know what you're doing for your savings account, your retirement account, your investments, life insurance, what you can do in terms of if you're going to buy a home or you want to sell that home. You should be thoroughly engaged in that process. And the other thing is, it's challenging to blend two lives into one when it comes to money, because inevitably we marry the opposite of each other. Somebody's the saver and the other person's the spender. And we have to learn to work together. One person is thoroughly committed to getting out of debt and want to reduce this debt as quickly as possible. And the other person is, it's a nice idea, but I still want to go on vacation. And how to blend those two and balance those two is really important. And I think, too, with money, the differences become very apparent. I think initially when we are dating and we're engaged and we get married, we're attracted to the difference. So I love the fact that he was a free spirit and he would spend money on me. And I love the fact that she was a saver and a spender, or she was a saver and she had accounts and she had everything set up. And then initially the attraction for the difference becomes an aggravation, because I'm aggravated because you won't let me spend, or you spend too much, or you're always saving every dime. And the difference is that wasn't attracting becomes an aggravation. But it's aggravating because it's revealing a part of us that needs to grow and mature and develop. And if you can get past the aggravation stage in terms of finances, you eventually come to a place of appreciation, because I realize without you, I can't become my best self. So I'm the guy in my marriage that I'm counting every penny, and I'm the saver. And if it was up to me, we would not do anything. And my wife is the free spirit. If it wasn't for my wife, we wouldn't go on any trips. We wouldn't go down the shore. We wouldn't go to Great Adventure. We wouldn't go anywhere. We wouldn't have a life. And so I need her to balance me out, and she needs me to balance her out as well. We've learned to appreciate the difference in terms of the money, and we kind of walk guys through that process.
That's awesome.
Now, would you say that in most marriages that it's always one way, or most of the time one way or the other, where mostly the husband controls the money or mostly the wife, or is it kind of split down the middle?
I find that it's more so, I think it depends on the demographic. So the younger the couple is, I see more younger men deferring to their wife to run the household. The older they are, so if they've been married for 15, 20, 25, 30 years, it's often the men who've been managing the finances. And if it's been problematic, it's because he's been controlling with it and a miser about it. But the younger they are, the guys are, unfortunately, we're not teaching our young boys financial management in high school and in grade school. And they're not equipped they're equipped to get a job, but they're not equipped to manage money. And women more so are. And so the younger they are, the more they're deferring to their wives, which is causing big problems in their relationships.
Very interesting.
Yes.
All of it. So there's a personal story that you share about a time when you went to purchase a house with your wife and things didn't turn out the way you would have hoped. Elaborate on that section of the book and tell us why you included it.
Yeah, I included that story because I really believe to convey truth to men, you have to tell them a story. You just can't tell them facts. And men appreciate vulnerability and honesty and transparency. They may not want to do it, but they appreciate when somebody else does it. And so I talk about how early on in our marriage, we weren't making a whole lot of money, and primarily because I wasn't fulfilling and maximizing all the gifts and talents that God had given me. So we weren't making a whole lot of money. We were trying to, we were renting, then we had purchased a little condo. We were going to try to sell that condo and buy a house. And so we go and looked at this house. We looked at tons of houses, and either we didn't like it or it was too expensive or they just weren't willing to work with us. We finally find this house that is a total fixer-upper. We go in there, and the homeowner's there. He's like 85 years old, and he's trying to shine this place up, but he is doing a very poor job. And it needs, everything needs to be gutted out. It had good bones, but everything else had to be gone. And so we went home. We put together our best offer for him. We went back to meet them the next day, brought our son Samuel, who at the time was probably a few months old, and we present the offer to him, and without even reading it, he looks at it and he goes, that's offensive. You can leave my house now. And he treated us like trash. He didn't say, well, that number's a little low. Do you think you could do better with it? It was because we didn't have enough money. He didn't even want to talk to us. And the reality was he was crazy for the price he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the lack of dignity that he showed us. And so I gather my wife and I gather Sam. We walk back to the car. It's raining. I got the umbrella, and my wife is crying. And she's crying because we've been denied so many times before. And I committed to myself that day that she's never going to cry again because we don't have the money that we need. And so I said, you know what? I got to tell that story because it still does something to me today, because I realized those tears that she cried, although he said the words, had I been a better steward of our finances, those tears would have never come. And so fast forward years later, we found another townhouse. We bought that one. We fixed it up. We sold that one. And my wife finally got the house that she wanted just this past last year. But it was a process, and it was a journey to go through. But I tell that story to men because every time, you're in a situation where you don't have the money, it's often not because of the economy or because of your employer. It's often the lack of personal development and growth on your end to maximize all the gifts and talents that you have at your disposal. And so the economy is not going to change. It has to be your philosophy about growth and about maximizing all your gifts and talents. There was no Great Husband's Playbook back then. There was no book. There was, and then it wasn't just a book. I went and got a better job and then started working at Rutgers University and teaching classes there, and then brought on the book. And so every step of the way I've tried to increase my ability to earn money for my family, so ultimately they can have what they need and have what they want. So that's why I share that story with men, because I really believe the more vulnerable and the more transparent you are with men, the better they're going to understand it.
Wow.
That's a very good story.
That's amazing. Somebody needs to write the playbook for being a great wife, but it should not include cooking dinner. Maybe I might write it. Right. I might have to write the book.
Yeah, you might have to write that one.
Yeah, people have asked me, particularly the husbands have asked me, okay, you wrote one for us. When's the one going to come up for the wives?
Yes. That was my next question.
Yeah. In due time. I got to push this one and get this one out there. Mm-hmm. And I probably won't write that book by myself. I'll probably write it with my wife.
Yes, that's awesome. So what distinguishes your book from other books in the marriage and relationship genre?
I thought to myself, how do you get a guy to read a book about marriage? Because I've read a lot of books about marriage, and a lot of them are great, but they don't cater to men. And I thought, how do you get a guy to read a book about marriage? Use sports. And so I use sports analogies and sports themes to show men what it takes to be a great husband. We have basketball analogies, football analogies, baseball, soccer, golf. We use a lot of different sports because the lessons and the concepts of sports directly apply to your life as a husband. I would sit down with the married couple, and I'm trying to explain to the husband, your job as a husband is to be a servant leader, to serve your wife, but also to lead her as well. I said, that's the same role that a quarterback has. The quarterback has to be the first one in the building. He's got to study the tape. He has to be the last one to leave. He has to lead this team, but he also has to understand the nuance of every player on the team to get the best benefit and to move the team forward. You're the quarterback of this team. You got to be the first one to show up and the last one to lead. You got to be the first to sacrifice and the last one to be rewarded.
Right.
And your team, your wife, will follow you. And whenever I put it in those sports terms, he got it. I could talk about the Bible till I was blue in the face, and it was a hit or miss sometimes. But if I use sports, he immediately got it. And I thought, you know what, I got to put all these sports themes and these sports analogies into a book so that guys can use this sports thing. Men have been playing sports since they were 7 and 8 years old. Some of them still play today in their 20s and 30s and 40s. Some played college football, but they're still watching sports. I mean, we just had the football season starting. So men are engrossed in football, and a lot of the sports themes that are connected to the book have a football theme. And there's a diagram of a football play on the cover of the book. And so I believed that this book is going to separate itself from all the others because men love sports, but I also know that most men love their wives, but they also don't have a game plan, a playbook, practical, realistic strategies that you can apply today, not flowery, pie-in-the-sky stuff. Realistic, doable, you can do this stuff today after you read one chapter and immediately see the impact and see the growth and the development of your relationship. And so that's what separates it from all the others. We use sports to connect with men.
Where do people buy the book?
You can get the book on Amazon.com. You can also go to thegreathusbandsplaybook.weebly.com.
Okay.
And those are the two places you can find it, Amazon or thegreathusbandsplaybook.weebly.com.
Okay, and this book, in case you just tuned in, is The Great Husband's Playbook by Pastor Jim Hart. We only have about 1 minute left, and I'm going to get this book for my husband. Do you have any advice on how you present it without causing an argument?
Sure. I would say, babe, I found this book that uses sports to show men what it takes to be great.
Yes.
And I thank you for all that you've done for me thus far, but I really believe that you would enjoy this book because he uses sports to talk to men. So,
and perhaps give it to him over a nice home-cooked dinner.
Yeah.
Yes. Right before the Monday Night Football game.
Yeah. There you go.
Well, this has been amazing. Looking forward to reading the book and looking forward to the next one that comes out when you do one for wives as well. Thank you for joining us today, Pastor Jim.
No, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity, and I wish you guys much success on your program as well.
Great. Thank you, Jim.
You.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back with more right after this.